Hello, everybody. If you're watching us live today in the WebEx Events app, you can join the conversation and network with other attendees using the chat tab to your right. You can take our session polls and ask or upvote questions in the Slido Q&A and polls tab, which is also on the right. We'll answer questions there. And at the end of this presentation, we'll launch our session survey where you'll be able to see a level up game code after submitting your feedback. I'm Ramy Riad, and welcome to our WebexOne session, Future-Proof Your Customer Connection. As we talk about messaging, 80% of customer service organizations will abandon their native apps in favor of messaging by 2025. We also see that there's a huge disconnect between businesses and their customers. 80% of businesses believe that they deliver a superior experience in the way that they service their customer. On the other hand, 8% of the customer agree with that analysis. And if we look at what customers want, they really want more engaging, richer channels. 72% want to choose the channel that they would communicate with a business. 95% of customers say that customer service is an important factor in their choice of loyalty to brands. 12% of millennials say that the telephone is their favorite channel in terms of a voice channel. We are also seeing that messaging landscape is evolving. We continue to see new channels evolve around us and new features being introduced daily. From SMS as being the default messaging channel, the introduction of RCS, to some of the over-the-top channels that are out there, customers really are expecting that enterprises to be where your customers are. Starting from a basic SMS experience to more of a branded text experience, expanding that into WhatsApp based on your region and market, and then opening up other options like Google Business Messages, Apple Messages for Business, and finally, a full-blown RCS chatbot experience. We'll talk about each of these channels separately, where WhatsApp recently introduced transactional notifications, where businesses are allowed to interact with their customers and send recurring notifications. These notifications are high value. They allow customers support. They allow product recommendations related to customers' previous purchases. And also, they provide helpful informational alerts and relevant offers to customers. Instagram is a newly launched channel that we added to WebEx Connect. It elevates your Instagram experience with personal care and commerce messaging experience that your followers will have. Engaging with your customers on Instagram allows you to meet your customers where they are because they're already following you, they're talking to you there, they're mentioning you in your story and their stories. So this allows you to unlock new revenue streams, leverage your data, and actionable influencer marketing that can result into better service, better customer experience. And finally, listening to your customers on what they have to say. We look at Apple Messages for Business. Consumers connect directly within the Messages app on any iOS device, whether that is your laptop or your mobile device. The businesses are verified and they're allowed to send rich media to engage with their customer, whether it's a list picker or quick replies. And also, Apple allows native integration of Apple Pay so that you can easily complete your checkout process. With embedded apps, you can link it to your accounts. And then finally, if the user feels that they need to communicate with an agent, the agent path is available and it is actually required by the channel. Similarly, for Google Business Messages, if you're using an Android device, you can connect with your customers directly from search. It's also available on iOS through Google Maps. You'll be able to see that the businesses are verified. The rich media and the carousels are available. You can mainly search for businesses through Google Maps, and agent fallback is available as well. RCS, it's really the evolution of SMS. The new default messaging app on Android is perfect for marketing communication. And also, we've seen that engagement rates went 200% higher. And with introduction of discovery options like QR codes and other discovery mechanisms, users can explore the brands that they're engaging with and communicating with. You can also share your location to get more relevant information to where you are and to the businesses that you're dealing with. And it's integrated by default in Android messages. And if this is really confusing or it's really hard to find a starting point, we do recommend starting simple. Get your brand out there, get your logo out there. Our branded text solution allows brands to deliver an engaging experience, sending your 160 messages, 160 characters through a branded, verified experience. You can control the branding, you control the appearance, strengthen the consumer confidence through that verified checkmark, and increase engagement and response rates. I'd like to welcome Craig Lennon. He's Global Partnerships Lead at Google. Craig, it's great to have you with us today, and we'll start with some questions for today.
Okay.
So let's start with, why is rich messaging important for Google?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, Ramy. Always great to chat with you. So why is rich messaging important to Google? Well, like many things at Google, it really comes down to one thing, which is it's what's great for the user. And if you're anything like me, a big part of your experience using a mobile device is messaging. It's communicating with my loved ones, my close ties, really, and messaging that's increasing with as generations go by, increasingly messaging becomes a more important part of your experience on mobile devices. And several years ago, we looked at that experience and determined for ourselves that really wasn't meeting the expectations of our users. And so it became a very important topic within Google to invest to really bring rich messaging on Android into the next foray. As you looked at kind of the SMS experience on Android, it was somewhat fragmented. And again, it really just wasn't living up to the expectations of users. And so we feel like we've been able to do that. We've made a lot of investments around RCS. We've also, really upgraded the messages client to include a lot of features that users have come to know and expect in rich messaging. Things like cross-platform reactions, multi-device, end-to-end encryption. These are all things that are present in a modern messaging experience that really weren't in the past for us. And then the last thing that I would say is entwined with that experience that users get on a mobile device for messaging. It's not just on a person-to-person basis, but a lot of your messaging experience also is with businesses. And so this is an area that we're also investing and working with partners like yourselves to upgrade that experience for users as well. So again, it really all comes down to meeting the demands of our users, and not just on our interpersonal relationships, but also in the business space.
That's great to hear. And now we're seeing a lot of the ecosystem evolve around messaging. How are the ecosystems evolving together on this, Craig?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it's really, from my perspective, I think that a lot of folks probably have different perspectives, but from my perspective, we see a lot of commonality kind of emerging, really in a few fronts, right? First of all, like, as we're mentioning, the richness of some of these messaging channels really enables a lot of, functionality that didn't yet exist: image sharing, rich media, some automation. These are all tools that we're seeing kind of come across the channels. So that's fairly common that we see it across the various different rich messaging channels. So that's one way we see it kind of evolving in a similar way. Another is around personalization. So we see a great opportunity for businesses in richer channels to be more personal and to kind of upgrade the experience again for users in a much more targeted or personal way. And really, the last thing I would say is, because of the pure nature of messaging being asynchronous versus a more synchronous channel, one of the things we see maybe as a common way the ecosystem is evolving is that it's lending itself to use cases or opportunities that maybe legacy messaging channels didn't. Right? It's increasing the bandwidth of the conversation you can have with users over messaging from the legacy low bandwidth, 160 characters of text, not maybe quite to a synchronous channel of like a voice call, but that space between those two is really a space that we see the ecosystem evolving together to really target and address.
You talked a little bit about the customer experience and how messaging is changing from a customer experience perspective. Does the customer experience impact the business outcome?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it absolutely does. I mean, I think we're still in the early days, but from what we see it actually has a very large impact on outcomes, and it really does come down to what you as a business want that outcome to be. I can talk about it a little bit across what I would call across different levels of the funnel. But essentially, we see it at all levels of the funnel, really is the main point. And some that maybe were more accustomed to tracking things like read rates or click-through rates or even conversions, some what I would call kind of mid to lower funnel type metrics. We obviously see them. We see them on orders of magnitude above things like email and SMS, and that's great. But I think what's really interesting to me and exciting is that this rich messaging channel actually starts to affect metrics that maybe we are just coming to understand, and some that maybe we didn't even expect. So a couple examples of that is ones that maybe you didn't maybe you expected but couldn't quite measure yet was things like intent to purchase and brand sentiment. These are also metrics or outcomes that get improved in a richer messaging environment that maybe wouldn't have been really moved in a legacy environment. And then some of the newer ones that we're starting to see, which are maybe higher up in the funnel, are things like attention value. Things that basically, because it's a richer form, users spend more time with the content, and it starts to have impact again in capturing people's attention and time in a way that display advertising or other medium does that would not have normally been associated with messaging. And again, that's all kind of attributed to the fact that it's a much richer channel and can deliver all kinds of outcomes that we weren't even really considering. And then really the last one that I would mention is again, because there's a lot more trust and it's a richer channel, you can get all the way down into the bottom of kind of the funnel into functionality like payments, right? Things that the richer channel lends itself towards as an outcome, which every business I'm sure wants, at the end of the day, at the bottom of that funnel, that we see also those outcomes are improved through rich messaging.
One of the things we talk about a lot is meet your customers where they are. So discoverability, how is that relevant today in rich messaging?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it comes back to the point I made earlier around it being a higher a bandwidth channel, and also kind of evolving from something that in the past was a bit more of a broadcast channel to something that's more personalized and engaging. And because of that, businesses have to relook at how they use the channel to show up for their customers. And so good examples of this are where you see a lot of the channels evolving to support things like offline to online. Great examples of that are, especially in rich messaging channels, are the use of things like QR codes, right? To show up for users in an offline environment that bring them into the digital experience and allow them, again, to take advantage of the features and functionality of rich messaging. I think, again, in a legacy broadcast world, it didn't beg the question of businesses on like, where do you want your channel to become available to users? Because it just simply couldn't support kind of the interactivity that type of showing up for them would allow. But I think that's the question that's getting asked now. And again, like I said, offline to online is a good example of that. Showing up as an ability to message within a brand's app, or even in things like search, are a functionality that businesses might want to enable now in a highly interactive, engaging, and personalized way that the channel can support. And so where you want that channel to be discoverable and where you want to show up for your user is an important question for businesses now. That is, again, we're in the early days, it's somewhat new, but you can really see the value of the channel and contributing to that shift.
Thank you, Craig, for joining us today. And speaking of QR codes, we'd like to invite you to try out our channel selector, where you can scan this QR code and try out the different channels based on the device you're using.
Thanks, Ramy.
And also, don't forget, there will be a session survey at the end of the session. You will see a level up game code after submitting your feedback.